Make no mistake, we do not want to keep our troops in Afghanistan. We seek no military bases there. As our coalition agreed, by the end of 2014, the Afghans will be fully responsible for the security of their country. Together with our allies, we will complete our mission there by the end of this year, and America's longest war will finally be over. Today, fewer than 10,000 troops remain on a mission to train and assist Afghan forces. We'll continue to bring them home and reduce our forces further down to an embassy presence by the end of next year.
Well, maybe not. There's some change on the way, potentially. How many troops are left on the ground in Afghanistan? Here's a piece from the New York Times. Those of us who worked with the Afghans over the last decade or more feel we've established a relationship that is of some enduring value, said James Dobbins, the Obama administration's former special representative for Afghanistan and Pakistan. I can't promise you that retaining a commitment at the current level will ultimately yield a completely peaceful, settled, and stable Afghanistan, he said, but leaving behind too few troops would lead to an Afghanistan in complete turmoil. You like Syria, he said. How would you like to have another one? There's one assessment. We're back with the panel. Charles.
Well, he could also have said, you like Iraq. How would you like to have another one? Look, I think it's clear that the military is putting a lot of pressure. People who've been there, all of our experts, including, you go back to the signatories on this, to Madeleine Albright, who isn't exactly a right-wing ex-Secretary of State, all say that we have to leave a residual force. We know what happened when Obama refused to do the same in Iraq. It's now essentially a colony of Iran and all the other consequences that we know about. So I suspect that on this, Obama's going to have to relent. Look, what he cares about is his legacy and image. He wanted to be able to say, I got us out. But I think he's worried about one thing. If he continues on this path and evacuates when obviously the Afghans are under real pressure from the Taliban and now even from ISIS, we could have a scene like Saigon 1975 with the storming of the embassy, Americans being airlifted in a catastrophe. He can't have that happen on his watch. He would rather have it on the next watch, so I think he'll be careful about evacuation. I suspect he'll keep the troop level where it is.
Latest Fox News poll, Mara, President Obama on foreign policy, President's leadership on foreign policy, weak and indecisive at 52%, strong and decisive at 32%. We've seen these numbers upside down for a while now, but there are, with Syria, now with Afghanistan, the question is whether 5,000 troops is still too few.
Well, that's a good question, but he is taking the advice of his military advisors who announced not long ago that they thought that the level that they were talking about was too low and they were recommending a higher level. We're hearing the number 5,000, which is, would keep it at a kind of steady state. But as much as the president wanted to get out, he doesn't want to leave chaos behind either.
Steve.
Well, look, we saw the clip from the president speaking in May of 2015 talking about 10,000. The gains that we've seen al-Qaeda and the Taliban make in Afghanistan have come with that level of force or greater. Why does he think that keeping 5,000 as residual force will weaken them in any appreciable way? I think it's a fool's errand to suggest that. Beyond that, what I think this tells us about the administration's approach to Afghanistan from the get-go was that it was deeply flawed. You had an administration whose strategy was, in effect, to separate al-Qaeda and the Taliban, to pretend that the Taliban was somehow gettable, that they were more moderate, that they weren't allied with al-Qaeda. It was wrong. We know it was wrong through documentary evidence. We're now seeing that it's wrong because you have the new emir of the Taliban swearing an oath of loyalty to Ayman al-Zawahiri. This was a flawed strategy from the beginning, and I think what the president's doing by offering to keep 5,000, if that's what the number in fact is an attempt at political cover. It's not a real plan. Those aren't real numbers. It's not likely to do any good, given what we've seen just over the past couple of years. And we have seen the Taliban moving forward, capturing new territory in Kunduz and other places. Back in a few weeks ago, John McCain was in a hearing talking and asking questions about what the force should be on the ground. Here he is asking about the conditions on the ground.
Do the conditions on the ground warrant a change to the current plan that calls for, by the end of 2016, we'd be a embassy-centric force?
So again, based on conditions on the ground, based on the transitions I've talked about, I do believe that we have to provide our senior leadership options different than the current plan that we're going with. Absolutely.
Short answer, yes.
We have about 10,000 now. NATO has about 17,000. Obama always wants to split the difference, which I think Steve is right. It won't be enough. That they ought to leave the force level where it is. Remember, this is Obama's war. He said, when he came in, he tripled the number of troops. He said, we have to win this war. He did the surge, and he obviously never really had his heart in it. 4 of the 5 deaths in the Afghan war have come under Obama's commander-in-chief. So I think he feels some responsibility, and I hope he keeps the current level.
Clearly didn't talk about it a lot during that entire time. That's it for the panel.